Hi everyone, Chanelle Cotton here from the Shubert Organization. I'm here at Shubert Studios filming the first in what will hopefully be one of many of the Shubert Advocacy Series. The Shubert Advocacy Series aims to invite groups who will bring compelling and engaging conversations so we can hear from them in their own voices and learn from their experiences. I'm so excited that joining me today are Britton Smith and Iman from Broadway Advocacy Coalition, Zane Mark and Kenny Seymour from MUSE, and Hyndman and Cynthia Tong from the Industry Standard Group.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining me here today. So let's introduce you to the public. We want to know who you are, how your organization was founded, how you're getting money for all these special projects and good work you're doing, what your backgrounds are in. So you know what, why don't Britton and Amber, let's start with you first and tell us about yourselves in Broadway Advocacy Coalition.
In 2016, Britton and I were doing Shuffle Along together on Broadway. And I was perusing Broadway World or Playbill one day, and I saw that a busload of actors were going down to Florida to do a concert for the Pulse Nightclub Massacre. And I was really proud of Broadway. And something we know about being booked and busy is that you sometimes miss things. And I was like, oh, I'm sure I've missed all the Broadway for Black Lives Matter events. So I started Googling and I found nothing. And I said, that's pretty on par for Broadway. And I remember just being so frustrated and angry and had nowhere to direct my anger. So I went where most of us go, to Facebook. And I wrote a message that was intending to poke the bear and hide the stick. I said, there's Broadway for Britney Spears, there's Broadway for Trader Joe's, there's Broadway for my scab kneecap, where's Broadway for Black Lives Matter? And I pressed enter and I walked away thinking I had done something. And I came back and I had Twitter and the post had blown up. It had been shared 1,000 times. I had 1 million text messages. People were like, Amber, if anyone's gonna do something, it should be you. And I said, I never said I was doing nothing. I just wanted to make white people a little angry. And suddenly it exploded. And I remember going to the theater and Britton looked at me and I looked at Britton, and it was a conversation of what are we going to do? And out of that whole frustration, in 2 weeks with no budget and no planning experience, we somehow managed to produce Broadway for Black Lives Matter at Columbia University. 1,100 people showed up. India Ari and Let Us See were our headliners, and Cynthia Rebo and Billy Porter. And after that, we were done and we walked away and we said, thank you so much for your time. And people said, what next? What are you guys going to do next? And we took a week to kind of gather our thoughts and figure out if we had even the capacity, because all of us still full-time artists with lots of bills and not a lot of time, but we could tell that there was a need in our community. And that's how Broadway Advocacy Coalition was born in 2016, just out of artists being frustrated and needing to speak up for ourselves because no one else was going to speak for us. Britton, you want to talk about the rest of it?
You killed it. That's how we were formed. And it's been a beautiful calling and sometimes feels like a curse ever since. You know, it's very heavy work to be committed in, and it teaches us so much about our own ancestral power as change agents. My grandma is a change agent. My great-great-grandmother is a change agent. We come from a line of change agents. So from Amber's post, it really shook up in all of us. Wow, we do have a role here. And how we're funded is by kind and willing donors. And we're excited to continue to build that roster because our programming, all of our leadership, all needs to be paid for and supported. We do not believe that advocates should be volunteering their time. It's expertise, it's change work, should be funded. And so we're really excited and committed to supporting everyone on our team and paying them like change agents and experts. Yeah.
Can you tell us about MUSE?
Hi. So yeah, being a music director on Broadway and a person of color, throughout the years, sometimes you look around and pretty much every music director on Broadway who is a person of color knows every other music director on Broadway who's a person of color. So looking around, a group of like-minded, MUSE came out of a group of like-minded musicians and creatives who recognized that there was a lack of people of color in high-level positions in the music departments of different theater productions. And what could we do to facilitate the change and to allow access and provide entryways into a field that is not really thought of by some, as accessible to people of color in those positions. You know, and with the founding members, people who are in the industry who have the ability and have the reach to actually facilitate the change, we came together and realized that there was something that we could do. And Zane, do you want to elaborate on that?
Every time I'm asked to do one of these things, I'm like the oldest cat on the thing. And I'm like, y'all need to stop touching up them grays and help a brother out, because, man, thank you. I love all of y'all. So, because I'm one of the oldest members in the crew, I've seen some things from way back. And let me back up. When was the last time you went to go see a show and you looked over into the orchestra pit and you went, not a lot of Black, brown, or BIPOC people down here? When was the last time you went to see a show that wasn't Motown or a Black show where there was a non-white person conducting? And so this has gone on for a while, and I don't want to get into the hierarchy of contractors and producers and that whole story, but if you're a conductor or a music supervisor, it's your responsibility to populate your pit. Now, if you don't know a viola player or a tuba player, then you hire somebody else to do that, but it's their responsibility to know some others. So on that note, our job, or one of our jobs at MUSE, is to create a database so that they, you fill in that blank, can no longer use as an excuse, we don't know where y'all are. And so it's not only to change the mindset of them, but us also. We have a responsibility to uphold us and not always waiting for you, them, to help us. We have a responsibility. We can do more than we're doing. And I think part of the problem, like you guys just said, we haven't done this before. I don't know nothing about this. I'm just trying to open some eyes. And then all of a sudden, oh crap, I guess I got to step up and handle my business. So like a lot of us, we just, trying to figure out where the light switch is. But in the figuring out, we're going to figure it out and hopefully help some other folk out along the way. And I'm going to stop talking now.
Thank you. And Adam and Cynthia, please tell us about the Industry Standard Group.
Great. So I'll start out by saying that I actually started pursuing commercial theater in particular on the producing track because I didn't see anyone else like me. I'm sorry if I missed this, there are probably 6 lead producers who are people of color who have ever produced things on Broadway. And so when I started out, I thought I had to wait 20 years, build my brand, my shows, and then be able to start letting people in through that process. And when George Floyd was murdered in June, and the community in theater started galvanizing, and we started hearing all these stories about racism within our own community, which have always existed, but we started to hear them on a bigger scale. A lot of people, a lot of artists, and a lot of music directors and composers and designers are rightfully saying, what are the producers going to do about this? But the producing body on Broadway is majority white, and it always has been. But there were several people like me who are kind of working our way up who said, okay, we don't have to wait 20 years. We can do this now. We can start changing the field now. And unlike Kenny, you said that all of you all know each other. The truth is, like, the 8 of us who are the founding members, we didn't all know each other because producing is kind of an isolated activity. And so it was really galvanizing to start talking to other people who kind of understood the commercial producing model, which in and of itself is an enigma. And there are only a few of us who have really understand it. And to be honest, I've learned a ton more since building this organization. And we started meeting every week and saying, what do we do about this one particular sector of Broadway that has never really been changed? And we assessed that there were a few things that we knew that we wanted to just share with people and to give them access into the model immediately. One of the barriers is the fact that in commercial producing, most people who come to the table are people who come to the table with significant amounts of money, and they're able to then climb up from there. And so we wanted to address that through our organization. And the Industry Standard Group is now a commercial investment and producing organization that is BIPOC led, that we are only bringing in BIPOC stakeholders, which felt radical when we said it out loud, and then we knew we had to do that. And I'm going to turn it over to Adam to explain more about the actual organization itself.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you, Chanelle and Shubert, for creating this platform for us to share. As Cynthia was mentioning, the founders and organizers of the Industry Standard Group are all BIPOC folks participating on the producing side, and we found each other because of an urgent need to galvanize. And myself, as a multi-hyphenate artist, I'm a Broadway performer, producer, and activist. My entry point was about disruption. I think the Industry Standard Group is significant because we're looking at something that we understand as visibility as power, and we're looking at what's behind that and what is invisible. And what we know behind the scenes is that behind the table, the areas that are not so seen, that's where the most insidious racism and the most antiquated perspectives are propagated. So it's really about disruption if we're going to create more equitable ecosystems. So our stakeholders, as Cynthia mentioned, are collected through principles around collective economics. You know, this is a not-for-profit model that uses resources sharing to create widespread access for BIPOC folks to participate on the producing side, to participate on the financial side, because there's a wealth of resource, perspective, and value of people not only participating in Broadway already as musicians, as actors, as crew, as managers, that are usually left out of producing and financing because of a lack of transparency. But there's people who are affinity and interested in Broadway and the arts that have the ability to support. But we're creating a space that they can access it with transparency and really be able to participate with lower risk.
In your opinion, and I'll start, since we just ended with you, Adam and Cynthia, I'll start with y'all for this one. In your opinion, what is the biggest obstacle this industry faces in order to be truly equitable, inclusive, and diverse? And how do we overcome that?
I'll just say there are so many obstacles. I don't know if I can pick one big one. And I think that's part of, if you're saying the biggest obstacle is that there's so many, and that's why so many organizations have cropped up. And that's why we're going to have success, is because we're each addressing a particular part of our communities. And I think one big obstacle we've had in the past is that there haven't been, I think every time someone comes up, we all look to them to be our savior, or an organization to be our savior and to address every single issue. And so what I've been really excited about this time is that we are starting to say, let's look in a micro way at one very specific thing that we can address and change that. And then the other people are going to be doing that at the same time. And hopefully we'll see something better. That's a bit optimistic though. Adam, what are your thoughts?
Totally. I would say that the predicament we're in is because we exist in a complex and interlocking system of oppression. Therefore, there's not going to be one quick fix to it. But if we are all galvanizing and collecting with specific and actionable mission, then we can be addressing our place in it. And it requires all of us to be active in this work of anti-racism, disruption, and decolonization, right? And if we're just speaking from the place of the Industry Standard Group, which is specifically taking on a mission of economic justice for BIPOC people, that's where we see it. You know, that's the area in the swath that we're particularly suited to address, knowing and creating radical transparency that it's not just about this, that we also have to create avenues for other people to bring their gifts and talents to contribute to our collective work.
Yeah, add to that. I think, as y'all said, you know, it's so nice to see a bunch of organizations who are like working in their, I don't want to say their own lane, but in their own place in the industry. That's huge. And we've never seen that before. And there's going to be many many benefit from that. I think when I think of what is our biggest obstacle, it's knowing that we are in a commercial business, and right now everything is stopped. So everybody's very like, we want to see this, we want to see this. The biggest obstacle in my mind is when that wheel starts turning again and people forget to check in, and they forget to like reassess. They forget that like, okay, right, we said that on the first day of rehearsal, this is what's going to make us feel like everyone can fully participate. All right. So the biggest obstacle isn't even here yet. It's going to be when we're back in the room, when we're actually placing all these new ideas and these new incredible ideas and systems in place to really see who's willing to work on it for the long haul. Like, and so I'm so glad that we're not alone. This is, and there are many other groups outside of this call who are going to be holding arms together and making sure that we don't forget what this moment has taught us about how important it is to move and then move and then move and then move and then move.
And if I could just dovetail on that, I think that's one of my biggest fears, even with MUSE. We got the who's who of Broadway folk. And as soon as the all clear is given, all of these guys and gals are going to have to jump on the 600 shows that they had to stop and put on hold. And then the 500 that have come up in the meantime, and try to address. So we meet once a week. Ain't no way in the world we're going to be able to do that in the fall, keeping my fingers crossed. So what everyone else has said so far, I think is beautiful in that I know there's a problem with producers. I know there's a problem with actors and the non-acting creative people on Broadway, but I know something about musicians, be it a musician, orchestrator, or composer. I know all about that because I've lived that for amount of years. And because of that, I can address that. And so if she's gonna, gonna say, well, Cynthia's gonna say, well, I know there's a producer issue. I know about that. She knows that there's a musician and an actor issue also, but I know about this. I'm gonna address that. And if all of us are attacking the monster, we're gonna bring it down, or at least create a pretty monster that we can all, get along with and deal with. And I think the major component is, going back to your original question, is identifying the problem. And let us all agree that this is the problem, both sides of the team, and go, how do we fix it? And move forward from there.
And if I can add on to that, Zane, all of the organizations that have come up and are doing amazing work, one thing that's very important is that they're creating a mindset shift. And I think throughout the industry, be it black, white, whatever race, there's a mindset shift that needs to take place. And if you look at, only calling on BIPOC musicians or creatives when it's a quote unquote black show, then that's part of the problem. Not saying that you don't want to be called, but call us for a non-traditional, what they would call a black show, which is something else. Like when I'd orchestrated a show called Amazing Grace, and a lot of people were surprised to find out that I orchestrated the show. It was almost like, really? And I think that's part of the shift that has to happen.
Alongside EDI and bias training for employees, what else can American theater organizations do to create a better and more inclusive workplace?
I don't believe in EDI trainings are a great first step. They tell you this is racism, this is bias, this is this, but it doesn't put into practice a mindset shift and a culture shift. You being able to be aware of your own identity when you walk into a room and how that interacts with others does not come from an EDI training. So an EDI training is a great first step. There has to be things put in place where we are in an industry of artists who are used to embodying. So how do you embody change? How do you embody real humanity? I think that there are ways to hold space for bringing in everybody's full self that an EDI training doesn't do. We're working on we teach this course at Columbia Law School called The Theater of Change, and it brings together lawyers with people who have been previously incarcerated and artists to figure out what is the role of the artist in changing our own criminal justice system. And we can't do that work, no matter how willing and how brilliant we are, without people who have been directly affected in the criminal justice system. So in that same model, if we really believe our producers and our theater owners that they really do want to create a safe space for all their actors, then let's put them in a room and have them listen and understand what that looks like. Let's envision towards that place and figure out what the gap is between how we've been working and where we want to work, and then collectively hold that accountable. That is different than an EDI training, and I'm passionate about that, as you can see.
And I will posit too that over the last 20 years, that EDI work and bias training has taken its place, especially in the theatrical realm and across regional theaters. We've realized, and it's proven, that it's inadequate to making change because it's inherently internal work and therefore passive, and change creates action. It is required to have action, So as I was mentioning a little bit earlier, like anti-racism and decolonization, if it's accountable, is going to be our playbook, right? Because it's going to require committed action that has no arrival. And if we're decentering and allowing that accountability to take form, we're going to see that we're below the bar. We're still below the bar. So more action is going to be required. So I think it's just important for folks to realize that, EDI work is really just in the service of white people building their vocabularies. It's in the service of white learning.
One thing that needs to be done across the board that a lot of people don't want to do and aren't willing to do is step down. If your board had 25 white people before Corona hit, and once we go back to work, it's still 25 white people, that's a problem. At least 15 of y'all need to leave. There needs to be a shift. Like, that's what's great about the work that WeCU White American Theater has done, is they've put names and faces so that people can see. All these boards have no BIPOC, no Black artists, no artists of color. And it's from the top down. So we have to go into these organizations, and people need to step aside. You've been on this board for 20 years. Thank you for your service. Move along and let someone else who is qualified, or someone who is not qualified, but you take the time to mentor them and give them the resources that they need so that they can sit at the table. That's what has to happen. Is there has to be an actual physical shift. It can't be everybody just signing up for a bias workshop. Some of y'all need to go.
This is a little bit tangential to the question, but I just really want to piggyback off of what Amber said about people stepping down. I'm really obsessed right now, Adam knows this, with the idea of the life cycle of people in positions and organizations. I think that there was a place and time for a lot of these organizations, and they did incredible work, but that if we become obsessed with the idea of legacy for legacy's sake, that's where we start to go, and that's power for power's sake. That's when we start to go awry, that there is a time and place for everything to arrive at, and then you have to make way for the next part of the next people or the next organization. Because we have talked about how Broadway and the nonprofit theaters in New York sometimes feel finite, right? There's only so much space. There's only so much room for some of these things. And that might be true, and we also think in abundance, and I think we can think more creatively than that. But even with the core organizations that exist, I don't believe all of them need to exist anymore. And it doesn't mean that their service to the greater American theater wasn't valued or wasn't crucial in the time that they were there, but that we need to make room for the next one that is of that thing in the time period. And so along those lines, the industry standard group, just to say, our fund has a life cycle, and we know where it's going to end. And then we're going to assess at that point, which is going to be about 10 years. We're going to assess at that point, did we do what we set out to do? And what are the next steps for doing something? Or is it over? And that's it. We are creating something, as Rob, one of our members, always says, that we hope does not have to exist in the future. If we address the issue, we don't need to exist anymore.
Yeah, the EDI thing is a good start, like you mentioned, but then we have to go to the next stage. And Georgia Stitt mentioned something in our weekly meeting yesterday about setting SMART goals. SMART being an acronym for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. So if I say we should do something and they go, yeah, that's great, we should do that, and then nothing happens. So if we're specific about what I need you to do in a measurable way, in an achievable way that's relevant, and most importantly, time bound, well, damn, you got your work cut out for you. And you can't say, well, I'm gonna call BAC and ask them to help me, and then I've checked off the Black responsibility list, or BTU or MUSE or whoever it is. No, 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 no. We'll help. What have you done first? We have to identify that problem.
Yo, I love that acronym, SMART.
Say it
That-
again, Zane. Say it again. I'm ready.
I had to write it down because, you know, it's SMART. S, specific. M, measurable. A, achievable. R, relevant. And T, time bound. And it's not just here, that's in your life, it's, you know, throughout, but here it just kind of like rang true, because how many times that's a great idea. Someone should do something about it, or someone should pick up that and run with it, like, But if you click all of those check marks and you can see where you stumble and where the idea fell apart, then let's go back and address that specifically.
Yo, these systems are set up to support what every other system in our country supports. Like, we look at Broadway, and you've been in the business, so you have known this, Zane, I'm sure, but now people are waking up to see, wow, the way our industry is set up looks like all the other industries and all the other forms of government in our country, because our country was meant to serve and uplift and carry the power of a very particular group of people. And so, yes, it doesn't surprise me that in the union for like musicians, it's like, yeah, we want everybody to be a part, but this is who is going to definitely be a part year after year after year. Yes, IATSE, blah, blah, blah. Even in IATSE, that is loyalty, that is family. People's cousins are set up. And our own government has, I mean, they've done that for generations for white people in spaces. Here's a whole town, here's a whole suburb, here's all these homes. We want to set you up, but don't rent these to Black people. Don't even give it to them for free. You know, so it's just very much all reflective of the power and the impact of white supremacy in everything, including our little lovely community of theater. You know, it's rooted.
I have to dovetail on that, because one thing that really resonates is the system that you were talking about, as far as how it's set up. They will bring certain people of color in, but it could be just as a consultant and not as a creative, to get the information on how to make something a certain way, but not necessarily a creative, which goes into deeper aspects of a show or deeper aspects of a production. So from the other side, I think that that's one way that can help, is actually looking at creative inclusion instead of just consulting inclusion. If that makes any sense.
It 100% does. I want to touch on something Zane brought up briefly. And so this is a question for everybody, but have you experienced anything problematic in this industry that perhaps someone who is not a Black, Indigenous person of color wouldn't realize is problematic?
Well, it was, okay, a particular award show, and huge table, big prep for the entire event. It was amazing. At least 50 people. I look around and see I'm the only person of color. And business as usual. May not seem as if it's a huge item, but subconsciously there's something there where you go, okay, I'm the only person. I don't see anybody else who looks like me. But that's one. I mean, there are more, but I'll pass it on to the next person.
I have one, my favorite. 2013, my first Broadway show. I'm a young baby. I've been in New York a year. I'm so green and so excited to be alive. And my show was not selling well, and the producers had come up with an idea for marketing. And so they called me to a meeting on the stage. It's 5 white men in a circle and me. And I'm playing Nina Simone. And their plan was to send me to churches in Harlem to sing. And I had questions because Nina Simone did not sing gospel music. And as a Black woman from the church, I just can't walk into anybody's pulpit and sing Sinner Man or Be My Husband. I have to sing a specific song, a specific type of song. And so I'm also trying to feel them out. And I said, I just kind of want to understand why this is the route that we're taking, sending me to Black churches. And this man looked me in my eyes with his whole chest and said, well, we tried sending out, advertisements. We tried sending out flyers, but Blacks don't read. So if you sing, they'll listen. And all the white men in the circle, And I mean, I didn't even know up from down, left from it. That was what they had decided in their meeting, is that Blacks don't read. So send the little Black girl to Harlem to sing. That's one of 10,000 stories I could share.
And it kind of goes to what Britton was saying, in that what a lot of non-BIPOC people don't realize is that the very water we swim in is problematic, right? It's not these glaring things. It's a whole system that's actually designed to work this way, that is operating the way it's supposed to. And there are brave individuals that have come up and shared their stories. And it's also a problem that we have to require people who have been harmed to tell their stories for us to believe them. That's like one problematic thing. In my own experience, like, you can see it at every single area. Why is there a lack of transparency for actors in the decision-making process? Why are they the last people to know? Why, as an emerging producer, am I the last one given time frame to raise $250,000 on a Broadway show when I'm breaking in? I'm the last one that gets to join the party and the shortest amount of time to raise. We can look every single area and see how there's a system created specifically to keep power allocated where power already is.
See, but I'm sorry, Kenny, but just on Amazon, that's a perfect example of those guys could have just been assholes. I mean, period. But my first knee jerk is he didn't think there was anything wrong in what he said. And that is the problem. And so that's why I go back to identify the problem.
To piggyback on what Amber was mentioning as far as her experience, this is a two-part. One, it is a mindset shift, because when I go back to Amazing Grace, which is a show that I'd orchestrated, now we're doing previews. You sit in the audience, the creatives have their pads, we're taking notes, and I had a white lady who was sitting right next to me, and everybody's in previews. I'm taking my notes, and she looks over and says, "Oh, are you a student taking notes?" And I say, "Well, no, ma'am, I'm the orchestrator, and I orchestrated the show, and so I'm just taking notes. It's what we do during previews." She's like, "Oh, that must have been difficult." Yeah, and so that's the mindset. It's like, and how do you? I mean,
and again, she had no idea that
there was nothing wrong with her saying that in her mind. It made So, and I think when we actually shut down, when everything shut down in March, I think I was the only Black music director on Broadway in March. I think that was the case.
I would believe it.
Yeah.
I keep coming back to the fact that our industry is relational and it's based on trust. And so part of the work that I know I've done myself, and I know what we can do as individuals, is to expand our communities and to start to build relationships of trust with people who don't look like you, so that when something happens, you don't have to go to the first Black person or the first Asian person, that the distant one that you know, and ask them what happened. Because the truth is, I can never know someone else's experience beyond everything that I educate myself with. And if I don't have someone I trust who I can go to and can talk like people one-to-one about something, I can't learn what I need to learn. And because it's not on someone random that I don't really know to teach me those things. But I know that I'll do that reciprocally for those other people who are in my life. And I know that that's what happens on Broadway, right? So designers hire people they trust. Those people become their associates. Those associates become the designers in the future. And I can't even go to a BIPOC designer or any designer and say, well, you can't hire that person. Like, you have to trust that person to hire the person they trust. And so that's part of it. But if their whole community looks the same as them, or are the same, gender, whatever it is, then you're only going to keep populating that community. So the people coming up with you are going to look exactly the same as you.
Something that happened after our June forum that really brought together like a lot of us in the industry to really look at the weight of these issues. After that forum, people who I trust, who I love, white, called me. Hey, I just never knew that was what was going on. Or like, hey, have I ever done anything to you? Hey, have I? And like, if everybody white keep texting me about, are they racist? I'm gonna change my phone number. So there has to be also an internal trust. Ask yourself. Don't ask your Black friend. Don't ask that Black advocate there's already so much trauma and effort and work that it takes to actually do the work. To have your phone lit up by all your Black friends, white friends, white producers who you've worked with. Hey, I ain't talked to you in a long time. You have not mattered to me this entire time. You matter to me now because now I'm nervous. No. You should have asked all those things you're asking me, you can really ask yourself. And so that's offensive. It's annoying and offensive. White people stop texting your friends.
If you have to ask that question, it's probably true. And then you should just say, what can I do moving forward? Because also having people apologize to you for something that you've already overcome yourself is not very useful for you. It's useful for the other person. And so we all make mistakes. And I think that's something that I keep reminding myself too, is as I come up, and if I'm lucky enough, and I will make mistakes, and then I need to own up to them and be accountable to myself and to other people, and then move forward. Do better when you move forward.
So let me ask all of you, this can be emotionally exhausting work. And coupled with the fact that we are in the middle of a pandemic, how do you find the strength to keep going and not just to lay down and say, you know what, it's too much, I give up, let someone else take the mantle?
I just want to say this first, and then I'll shut the hell up.
No, please don't.
If you let someone else take the mantle, that doesn't mean you've given up. Like, I've been a part of BAC for 4 years, and it is time for me to shift. That is right. It is right. As you said, Cynthia, there is a time and place for a certain type of leadership. And our next leader in this space will be a Black woman, because that is what is necessary. And I have to say, I've been a good leader. It's time for me to leave. It's time for somebody else to take this on. Like, that also is good. And also making sure, I have to remind myself all the time, if I'm trying to transform other people, other systems, other things, am I being transformed through this work myself? And always asking myself, this is transformation work, not just for the problems I see, but even internally. How am I showing up as a Black queer man in a barbershop? How am I showing up as a Black queer artist on calls with theater owners? How much of myself am I bringing in? What am I leaving out? It's a transformational thing as well. So yeah, it's hard work, but if you're also transforming through the work, there's joy and there's a gift for that, for you, for your ancestors, and for whoever's next.
Piggyback off of Britton, I like to say that I can't pour from an empty cup. So self-care is of the utmost importance. There was a tweet the other day that said most Black women don't want to be activists. We just had to speak up because nobody was speaking up for us. It's exhausting. I'm so tired. I'm tired. My tired is tired. But there is also something in me that knows it is a part of my responsibility. Too much is given, much is expected. I can't be an artist and not reflect the times. The quotes on quotes on quotes are there. But what is most important is for me to take care of myself. So I am prioritizing wellness and self-care and self-love. And that looks like laying on the floor and doing nothing, or twerking to some trap music, or drinking something hot and warm. It looks like whatever I want it to look like. And those moments fuel me so that I can come back to the table and keep going. Like Britton said, you have to know when it's time to step away. And when you said stepping away is not failing, that, when I tell you, that ministered to me, because it is a great joy when I think about it. I want to do the work, and then I want to step aside, lift as I climb, and bring another Black woman into the fold so that she can run the race too. Like it's shared community and responsibility. I don't want to be the face of anything for longer than a minute, because I want us to build community, because that's what we lack. I like to think about how the Broadway community lacks community because we move out instead of in a circle. If you think about Hollywood, you win the highest award, you win an Oscar, you have Oscar recognition, people start opening up their own production companies and they hire their friends, and then they make more movies and they make more things. The greatest reward for a theater actor is to never have to do 8 Broadway shows again. So people get their Tony and they leave and go to Hollywood and they don't look back, because the model we've created on Broadway is exhausting and will kill you. So it is hard for us to create community, because once everybody gets a little something, they are done. It is hard for us to maintain community. It's hard for us to build on anything, because as soon as somebody catches momentum, they are gone to LA. So while I'm here, while I have the time, the space, and the opportunity, I want to help as many people as I can, which requires me to take care of myself so that I can endure. Self-care.
You know, it's easy to talk the talk and not necessarily walk the walk. So what are some tangible actions you would like to see this industry take to prove that they're not just all talk?
I think a major component is just starting with listening. Like, y'all just need to stop talking. Y'all didn't know anything was wrong. You still don't know what's wrong, but now you writing all these Instagram posts about what you don't even know what you don't know. First of all, as my grandmama would say, you don't even know what you don't know. But you also don't know what really needs to be done. And I know they're sitting around having meetings on meetings, and there ain't nobody in the room with no knowledge or education. So we need to start. Y'all just need to listen first. Because I think there's an immediacy and an urgency, because people are scared of getting called out. So they're trying to do. We just need to do, and we need to show that we're doing something. And the first thing y'all need to do, honestly, is just stop and listen. Y'all need to get in communication with people who don't look like you, people who you've been ignoring, people. Stop, listen, have a conversation first before y'all start doing. That's just what came to my brain first.
Yo, I've always had a big old mouth. I love to tell people what to do. So Telsey, casting agencies, Tara, all of those places, white spaces. I'm so tired of walking into auditions, doing any type of thing, and not seeing any people in the casting spaces of color. I know that there are a few. That is not okay anymore. So when we return back to work, I hope you guys have done your due of making more people of color casting folks in front of me, because it's a really hard thing, I promise. If you listen to stories of people of color who have come into your office and they don't see anybody who looks like them, it's a feeling. And if you really are looking at the phrase Black Lives Matter, drink that over and over again and saying, well, how is your office either perpetuating harm or making it safe and equitable? Also in marketing, that story, like with Amber, that is not just Amber's story. Everybody knew their work. There's work on every side. I also want our union and the Broadway League and producers to work together to make sure that values are shared. We don't share values in our organization. Like we have our own set of values that we have to keep coming back to. You can book a show and not share the value of the production. So didn't nobody tell me I couldn't be an asshole? I sing good, I dance good. I don't share that value. I think racism is cool. No. There has to be a set of values that everybody shares, and those same values have to be put into the houses. So when I'm working with so-and-so from IATA who lives in Jersey, there's a shared understanding that's not coming out of my mouth of what is acceptable and not acceptable in this house. That's not been done. We just assume that everybody is in this community and working together. So when I come back to work, everybody, I want there to be some shared values that involve everyone's full participation and safety in the space. It can't be not named, you know?
And if I can, now this is, how do I say this? It also entails, I believe, theaters acknowledging new creative BIPOC talent and realizing that the BIPOC or Black experience, the narrative doesn't always have to exist around one cultural narrative, either, you know, period, slavery, that type of thing, that there are more stories to be told as well, and being open to that and accepting and acknowledging that.
Yeah, I think, I know we were talking beyond the Broadway model, but just in the Broadway model, the truth, there's a fear of risk, but the truth is every show is risky. And like a lot of white shows, if we're gonna call them that, don't make their money back. So why are we scared about whether something else is not gonna make its money back? Like, because if there's like a fallacy and like a belief of investment that certain things are sure things. And that I think, I won't name shows, I have my opinions, but like there are certain shows that I think that half the investors, and suddenly you have $6 billion in investment, put their money in not because they love the art or were excited about it, but because they thought it was a sure thing. And sure enough, they did not get their money back. So why are we like trying to follow this model of like quote unquote commerciality? And I can't guarantee that this other show that is written by an exciting BIPOC creator is going to make their money back, but your last show didn't either. So I don't know why we are working off a model that isn't even working for you right now.
To get really to your point, we'll see when people are walking the walk, when they take the time in the contracts, right? When we see it in the contracts. And also when we empower folks to bring good faith back into the negotiating process. You can't move on until both and all parties understand what every clause is about and what this contract is actually agreeing to. So if we're not actually taking that time to be responsible around how we're making agreements so that they benefit all parties, right? Then we're not doing the work.
Yo, just real quick on that little nugget, I promise, Chanelle. The writer has so much power. Yo, they write the constitution of how their show is gonna go. AKA, I'm so-and-so, I'm a writer. Here's my show. If you want it in the contract, the director has to be Black, the editor has to be this, and like a writer can write that in their show. And what makes them not necessarily want to is maybe they don't know that they can. And the retaliation of a producer going, well, never mind, then I won't take your show. If we can empower our writers and support them to putting in their full vision, not just of the cast, you know, but of how they want their show's values and how they want their shows to look like with Kenny and Zane, you know, like, and this producer, like these like levels of, it needs to be this much representation, this much this, that's a constitution. You can't do that show without that makeup because the writer put that in. These contracts are also a way into change.
Once again, I'm going to try to be like you and keep it short, but the same thing happens for the musical director, the musical supervisor as well. Whoever's conducting the show by the musicians' union rules is the boss. He says who's going to be in the pit or not going to be. He's the band lead. He gets paid extra to do that. Do that. Take that on. I think the other thing is with musicians, with actors, writers, any creative is not to be afraid that when they say, well, screw you, or if something bad happens, to have an outlet or a place to say, hey, this just happened. You know, I think the other thing is, I don't want to be known for being a great Black musician. I just want to be a great musician. I just so happens that I'm Black, or that's how I'm identifying, or whatever you want to call it. That's what the deal is. So you have the power. Yes, I think the next aside is you have the power. Something didn't go the way you wanted it to go. What are you going to do about it? And so when all of us go back to our individual groups, and I ask you to take that SMART goal mandate back with you. So in your contracts, in your ideas and new thoughts for going out further, are you being specific, measurable? Is it achievable? Is it relevant? And is it time bound? So that we don't get caught up in waiting and nothing happens. The intention is there. We all want, did we really put our best foot forward? The old man is finished speaking.
A lot of organizations have popped up, thankfully, to address the lack of diversity and diverse voices. Once we start to gear up to go back, and once we actually do go back, how is your organization laid out, making sure that they don't lose steam?
One thing is continuing to develop this directory and build the community of musicians, finding them, providing master classes based on topics that will be beneficial to include, young musicians and people of color who want to get into this industry, and keeping the dialogue open about what is needed, what are the requests and the things that people find they want when they try to get into this industry, that they find that they can't. Partnering with like-minded organizations such as Berkeley and other partnerships that we have coming up, but mainly keeping the dialogue open, keeping the communication, connecting with other organizations, reaching out to the unions, the contractors, and just making sure that this work continues to happen and is not just a trend that tends to, come and go. Zane, you want to add to that? Or?
Been talking too much. I'm trying to give somebody else a chance here. Well, we're also trying to just put certain things in place now. So if we say once a month, we're going to have a meet and greet, I don't know what you want to call it, on Zoom, and then break into smaller rooms so that some people who would never have an opportunity to speak to Kenny or Alec Lackamore or Stephen Aremus, now you have this personal 3 people speaking to 2 people situation. They would have never had that before. So if we can get more things like that in place now, when the floodgates open later on, they'll already be in place, so we can just keep building on that. And I think that's what our goal is now. We're relatively young, and we're still trying to figure out what the need is in the Broadway situation, as well as just the musical situation across the country. But we're getting there, and we're seeing small steps. Is it going as fast as I would like it to? It never will. But we're noticing that we are making steps. So the more things that we can set up now and have our team members be a part of, and then, so if Kenny's in charge of the XYZ committee, I'm there to support him. And we're supporting our leaders, and we're setting these things up now so that when it does open up, they're already in place. And so not only are the founding members there, but these other members are there to help support because they believe in what we're doing and they want to push it along.
Yeah, so the Industry Standard Group is a body that is actually gearing up for that moment, for when to have particular impact for when the industry is back up. We understand that money has power, especially to people who hold the power right now. And we're a group that has not been around this side of the table before to hold producers accountable, to provide transparency, right? So by creating a really wide and broad accessible pool of BIPOC people to present and to disrupt in this area, we're gonna be able to hold people accountable like never before because we got the receipts, so we're ready.
Any final thoughts?
It's always great to be on a call with brilliant, beautiful people of color I know and don't know. A lot of times you're on these calls and you're challenging people who are in positions of power, and they're all white. And like, that's just the name of the game. Everybody in positions of power that are not white that I know are in my circle and are on here right now. And it's a pleasure. So thanks for I want to get to know Zane and Cynthia and Kenny more. And so thanks for the opportunity to keep my curiosity about new things and other ways of connecting. And yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo the same thing, that during the pandemic, because we've had the time, I think, you talked about sustaining when we come back, and I don't know which groups will be able to sustain and which won't, because everyone has to take care of themselves first, and that's totally fair. But what will have changed is that I think that there's been greater community building. And one thing that's kind of nice is every time I get on a call full of other producers, I actually know all the BIPOC people in the room now. Well, it's nice to see more than one, but like then if there's like 5, I actually know them all. And that's like really incredible. That I'll take with me. The relationships we're building now, I think will continue to revolutionize at least small sections of the work that we do. I'm hoping we'll do bigger, but at the very least.
I got to add something to that. I want to go back right before to something you mentioned, Britton, about going into casting. And I've been, in certain instances, the only Black person in the room behind the desk. And believe it or not, at the end of the audition, walking out, you get comments like, I was so happy to see you there. Like, I was so happy to see you. So that is definitely a part of, I meant to mention that earlier, but kind of got away from me, but I just had to piggyback on that.
I was happy to see you in some of the rooms I've been in. I'm like, okay, yeah, okay, right there. You know, it's been you a lot of times in the room. Yeah.
I left my name and our museonline.org and also my cell phone number. So I'm trying to walk the walk and talk the talk. So anybody needs to reach out to me, reach out to me. The email, screw that. Call me directly. Don't send me no text. Call me. And whatever I can do to help, I'm going to do my best. All right.
Same here. Mine's in there as well.
Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining me today. I know I really got a lot out of this conversation, and I hope you all did too. And I hope even more people who watch it get something out of it. And so with that, I thank you all and be well. And we look forward to seeing more of what you do in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.